The past year and a half has presented significant challenges, primarily due to my health struggles. There has been intense pain in my stomach and back, and it has only escalated over time, leading to the need for a cholecystectomy. Yet, even after the surgery, the pain seems to remain constant. 9 months after the surgery, it seems like only now I am recovering. The recovery process looks slow and tedious. However, this pain is not the only symptom that has caused me concern. It is just one of many persistent symptoms I have been dealing with chronically. Some of these issues, aside from the pain, have been with me for as long as I can remember, essentially since my school years, throughout college and into my adult life. These symptoms seemed intermittent. They faded for days, weeks, even months, or so I thought, and were overlooked the majority of the time because I did not prioritize my health. However, they were troubling enough to make me wear bands and crepe bandages on my wrists in school, college, and work for some support and warmth. My hands felt weak and my legs ached, felt numb and tingled all at once. Significant tremors in my extremities would intensify during stressful situations like exams, especially boards, while meeting deadlines or when I tried to be a passenger on a motorbike. Embarrassed and frightened, I focused on maintaining my stability to avoid attracting attention and prevent accidents. Ultimately, the fear stopped me from riding two-wheelers, let alone learning to drive. Most of the time growing up, I complained about various physical symptoms, including intense headaches, aching limbs, insomnia, numbness, heaviness, and strange sensations on one side of my head that radiated to my neck, shoulders, and arms. All the while, I consistently struggled to articulate this discomfort and pain to my family, either because I would often forget about it and think of it as white noise as soon as I felt better, or probably due to my inability to articulate how I felt in general. It is as though after living with discomfort for a while, it becomes a part of you, and it is difficult to distinguish between comfort and discomfort. When faced with headaches and pain, I either took an over-the-counter painkiller or just ignored them until they subsided on their own. I mostly kept these symptoms to myself until it reached an unbearable point. I now understand that having a high tolerance for anything has downsides and does not end well. Furthermore, from a young age, there seems to have been significant difficulties with stomaching oily and fried foods, as it led to nausea. In addition to that, there was severe bloating and discomfort on the daily that concerned me for years on end, but got routinely overlooked by myself, as I thought I could live with these issues while still functioning and going about my daily life. Along with all this, skin-related concerns have also been a prominent aspect of my health. Itchy blisters popped up on my palms and feet as a child whenever I came into contact with water, mud, or sand, contributing to a sheltered upbringing where I was not allowed to play in the elements. As a teenager, there was hyperpigmentation and patchy skin that I tried to solve on my own by trying different soaps and creams due to people often expressing their concerns about my discolored skin and changing skin tones, comparing my skin with others, especially my mother. It led to confusion and worry on my part, especially during my teenage years as my complexion became a topic of discussion among relatives and strangers. Many voiced their concerns about my future marital prospects, suggesting that my skin color would make it unlikely for me to find a suitable partner. Some even predicted that my younger cousins, who were just toddlers then, would likely get married before me, a prophecy that seems to be coming true. But if you ask me, I believe that my skin color had nothing to do with it. However, such instances made me write about these issues. The article titled "The Ugly Duckling Syndrome" stemmed from many such experiences. The one that I had written for the magazine Wellness and Wellbeing while freelancing for the company named Agate Technocom Private Limited based in Kolkata to make ends meet after moving to this new city. In the article, I talked about my friend who was getting teased for her smile by other schoolmates. Truth be told, that friend did not exist since the incident was all about me. Those days, I did not know how to express and incorporate my personal stories into my write-ups and reports. Nor would it have been easier to make my editor accept such a proposal. So I whipped up an imaginary friend to narrate my story, as I did not know how else I could write about such things. After all, I was not ready to be vulnerable in any way. Vulnerability was a far-fetched idea, something quite alien to me. So now it seems like the world has a way of bringing you back to what your soul has wanted all along. And it stuns me to see that most of the time the things that our soul craves are the things that we run from, things that we fear the most. It stuns me to see that most of the time things we are running from turn out to be what makes us who we are. Coming back, in 2014, after a few jobs and a few years of adult life, I was made aware that all my symptoms were probably just mostly anxiety and depression. I got diagnosed with bipolar affective disorder with traits of borderline personality, and I accepted that explanation, mostly. Reflecting on my past, I realized I was constantly anxious, as I may have mentioned in one of my earlier videos. Often I felt nauseous and threw up a couple of times right before exams. In fact, during my 10th board, I developed gastroenteritis just before the math exam, which was probably induced by anxiety as well, considering I already disliked the subject. Nonetheless, I managed to sit for all my exams and somehow made it through. In 2014, I was prescribed medicines for the first time after experiencing anxiety and depression due to various environmental triggers. The treatment lasted around 5 to 6 years. Initially, the medicines helped me calm down and reflect on my life and behavioral patterns, providing a sense of tranquility. I had always experienced anxiety to such a degree that at one point I had forgotten what it felt like to be without it. It felt like I was at the front of a never-ending battle 24/7. The medicines I took served as a tool that allowed me to step back and evaluate the bigger picture at the time when I was in a confused state of mind and had many unanswered questions about myself, my career, and my life. all of which contributed to a painful existence. As time went on, I felt that the medicines were dulling my mind and making it increasingly difficult to function normally. I noticed how I was losing myself with each passing day, becoming just a shell of the person I once was. So I decided to stop taking the medications once and for all. There was a knowing that it would only be possible if I could improve my lifestyle. Determined to change my situation and regain control of my life, I began working on it, even though initially it seemed impossible and hopeless. The persistent anxiety in my chest and the accompanying uneasiness were hard to shake off. If I could not take a step yet, I would continue to dream about it, imagining the life I wanted, where I could wake up without feeling anxious, where I could feel healthy and be free of overeating my way into making me feel whole, and be free of the smoking habit that I had newly developed. Micro steps were my way of moving forward toward this dream, and things kept falling into place slowly. Some aspects that helped me through this journey could only be described as miracles, since they defied explanation. Reflecting on my journey now, it becomes clear that it has been a deliberate dance. With each step I took forward, even if it started as a thought, a stepping stone emerged, forming an invisible bridge that brought me to the me I am today. This me now knows what it is like to live without anxiety or to experience anxiety just occasionally. This me can understand the reasons behind those sporadic anxious feelings. There are no more tremors like before. This me does not smoke anymore, is no longer as hopeless as before, and has not been depressed for the past 5 years. This me seems to have a deeper understanding of the body, mind, and soul than ever before, as the fog that once clouded this mind cleared away. This me is happy with myself, with all the improvements made so far. I took steps to improve my lifestyle, which somehow began with me becoming a vegetarian towards the end of 2019, even before I could quit smoking. I consider my transition to vegetarianism to be a form of what some might call divine intervention. As I said, some parts of my journey defy explanation. Around that time, when I turned vegetarian, I was probably experiencing what one might call a nervous breakdown. It felt like I had hit rock bottom from every angle, and the only way forward was to rise above my circumstances, which to me seemed impossible. After 5 or 6 years on medicines, my will to live had diminished, and my depression was at its peak. To others, it seemed that my depression was solely a result of the illness that doctors were treating. However, I knew that the medicines, along with their side effects and the various environmental triggers, were contributing to my worsening condition. After years of taking various combinations of prescription drugs such as lithium carbonate, clonazepam, sodium valproate, risperidone, olanzapine, fluoxetine, I realized that both the effects and side effects of these medicines were severely impacting my life. During my treatment, I began to gain weight, reaching almost 98 kilograms, fueling my negative self-perception and distorted body image. Additionally, I developed hypothyroidism, probably as a result of being on lithium all those years. Although I have always been concerned about being overweight since I can remember, it has always been challenging to lose the weight I had gained. This weight gain substantially diminished my confidence and contributed to my increasing anxiety related to social activity and interactions. While anxiety was a constant in my life, depression was more of a recurring presence, influenced by various environmental triggers and changes. I understood that if I wanted to stop taking my medicines altogether, I would need to learn how to manage my anxiety through alternative methods and improve my lifestyle, starting with quitting the habit of smoking. Knowing all too well that if I failed to make these changes, medicines would remain my only option, and that felt daunting. It had begun to feel like my doom. The treatment felt more like shackles, leading to a pervasive sense of entrapment. I struggled to communicate my feelings to my doctors because I feared that suggesting they stop my medicines might seem rude or offensive. However, I had a nagging intuition that these medicines would do more harm than good if I continued taking them. I decided to take matters into my own hands. I realized that the only way to convince my doctors and family to support me regarding this was to take proactive steps and demonstrate improved results. However, I felt extremely confused and hopeless inside. I was at a point where I found it difficult to envision a future in which I was healthy in mind, body, and soul. I could not see a way to recover from the point I had reached. It was difficult to imagine a future where I felt confident about my career, health, body image, or sense of self, especially as everything seemed to be falling apart. Since I did not want to live like this, all I could think about was giving up on life, as nothing made sense anymore. I felt like my only option was to do or die, in both literal and figurative sense. Each time I tried to express my concerns, my doctors urged me to continue with my prescriptions, and I was dismissed. Looking back, they may have seen me as a hopeless case, a perception I now understand. Although I have come a long way when it comes to understanding and working on my mental and spiritual health, when it comes to my physical health, on not so good days, I still deal with doubts, especially on days when the symptoms are intense. It allows me to see the uncertainty in life. However, it pushes me to take steps I never thought I could. Although there are doubts and worries in my head, I hope to overcome them and get in better shape soon. Throughout my childhood and into adulthood, I struggled with a persistent sense of unwellness that negatively affected my self-image. There were various physical and social challenges due to these symptoms. Everything changed stepping into my teenage years due to puberty and menarche. The more I observed the world, the more my body changed and grew, and the more the rules came to light. My perception of family dynamics and society changed. My ideas about them fell apart brick by brick. The more I learned about the rules for being me in a world where I could be like anybody but myself, the more the days passed, the more I felt the walls closing in on me. Was it because I was a girl? Was it because of my upbringing and culture? Was it just the society, the community, or was it just the world? Was it because I was human? I often wondered. Nothing seemed fair, and just breathing in the air felt burdensome. As a child who was not very vocal, I found it difficult to express my problems to my family and communicate my symptoms to my doctors. Or perhaps I preferred not to open up about it, as opening up never seemed to work in my case, as nobody seemed to understand, or it seemed like I spoke an alien language. Sometimes it still feels the same. Since I experienced this unwellness in multiple organ systems simultaneously, I often ended up describing different symptoms from various systems, which likely came across as confusing. As a result, my physical issues went unnoticed. Even now, no matter which specialist I visit, I often leave feeling confused as I try to articulate all of my symptoms at once. I think that my various symptoms might be interconnected, but explaining them has been difficult. I struggle to distinguish between what is constant and acute, which symptoms require more attention, and where there is overlap. I struggle to point out what is more important and what is not. In 2024, I was diagnosed with chronic calculous cholecystitis, and I underwent laparoscopic cholecystectomy and adhesiolysis on March 28, 2024. Before the diagnosis, I kept getting my symptoms mixed up, since nausea was a symptom that overlapped with the symptoms of my anxiety and migraine like headaches, and my intolerance to deep fried foods or those that are rich in fat also led to nausea, which I mistakenly attributed to my quirks, thinking it is normal since I could never stomach some food since I could remember. I believed that the severe swelling and bloating in my abdomen was simply due to being overweight, an incorrect assumption stemming from my insecurity, which I tried to hide from everyone, including doctors, after being frequently teased about it while growing up. Therefore, navigating the diagnosis of cholecystitis has been a challenge. I felt increasingly lost as my symptoms by the end of 2023 became intertwined with my growing worries. I experienced abdominal pain, discomfort in my right shoulder and arm, and chest palpitations simultaneously. At one point, I was genuinely concerned that I might be having a heart attack due to the palpitations. My physician eased my worries with an electrocardiogram, and looking at my physical and chronological age, he assured me by suggesting that it might be anxiety once again. Seeing the severity of my pain, I decided to follow his advice and reluctantly took the prescribed medicines for anxiety. A few days later, I noticed a yellowish tint on my skin for a couple of hours, accompanied by chills and feverish feelings. Concerned, I consulted another doctor who recommended an ultrasound. The results unveiled that my gallbladder was the culprit, leading to the conclusion that surgery was the only option. So I thought this surgery was the answer to all my feelings of unwellness, and after this surgery I might lead a better life. However, despite undergoing surgery, I continue to experience stomach and back pain and have visited my surgeon several times to address my persistent complaints. In recent months, I have grappled with many unanswered questions regarding my health and the symptoms I have experienced, both past and present. I always had a sense of knowing that it had something to do with the tolerance of carbs. I tried reaching out to my family, relatives, and doctors to share my concerns, but each time I felt unheard and dismissed. Common responses included phrases like, "It's nothing like that. Just exercise, go for walks, and eat everything in moderation, and you'll be fine." Or comments such as, "I have never heard of anyone who can't eat rice." Since I love rice and it is a staple in my culture, it was hard to eliminate it from my diet. When refraining from eating rice, fish, meat, and sweets without a proper explanation, especially in social gatherings. Others often express their disapproval and question my dietary choices. After my gallbladder removal, I was to follow a diet mainly consisting of rice, easy to digest vegetables, lentils, etc. for the first few months to ensure a smooth recovery. So I obliged. I was informed by my surgeon and reassured that I can eat anything as long as it is in moderation. The health issues I experience are common and that I do not need to worry excessively about them. Currently, I have been dealing with severe pain and discomfort in my abdomen, particularly on the right side, alongside nausea, earaches, headaches, and pulsatile tinnitus that occasionally intensifies to a degree that feels unbearable, disrupting my sleep. Additionally, I experience sudden changes in vision and taste, intermittent swallowing and breathing difficulties, extreme thirst, and severe aches behind my left eye. I also suffer from sensitivity to light, sound, and smell that my ENT and eye doctors have suggested likely relates to migraine. After undergoing a comprehensive series of tests, CT scans of my head, blood tests, ultrasound, audiometry, and tympanometry, we have reached several definitive conclusions. I am now at last diagnosed with PCOS and grade 1 non-alcoholic fatty liver. Throughout this diagnostic process, I noted that most of my symptoms worsened with my consumption of food rich in simple carbohydrates and also with food that is fatty, sugary, spicy, and processed. The severity of my symptoms appears to correlate directly with the amount of carbs I consume daily. However, I haven't received any explanation from the professionals yet that satisfies my mind, other than the answers I received from studying all about PCOS and fatty liver by myself after receiving the diagnosis. The diagnosis has allowed me to put one and one together. After all these years, it is only now that 1 + 1 is making sense in the case of my physical health. The hardest part was recognizing patterns through mindfulness, and the more challenging aspect was explaining these notes to professionals, to the doctors, without getting dismissed. I have recognized a pattern. Some days when I eat a lot of rice or rice-based dishes, my symptoms worsen, and my pulsatile tinnitus is so unbearable that it becomes difficult to lie down and sleep. Before the diagnosis, when I mentioned these concerns to the numerous doctors I met over time, I was dismissed and told about eating everything in moderation. However, now, after the diagnosis, when I mentioned how my body was reacting to rice to my gynecologist and my surgeon, they both nodded their head and said, if that is the case, then don't eat it. Based on this, I have reluctantly concluded that I should avoid not just packaged foods, deep fried foods, and fatty foods as a result of my surgery, but also simple carbs, fructose, and sugars, or at least keep their intake to a minimum to stay healthy. Yet I see how it is easier said than done, but I will keep at it. I have also encountered numerous discussions in videos about the advantages of adopting a gluten-free and dairy-free diet for managing PCOS. I'm not very fond of refined wheat flour to begin with, and as of now my body doesn't seem to mind a tiny bit of whole wheat once in a while, so I'm figuring things out by keeping it at its minimal as well. In the past 5 years, I have transitioned to a plant-based diet. I kept my options open regarding dairy, as it was easier to meet my dietary needs with dairy products than with other vegan alternatives. Since my gallbladder removal, I have noticed that I can no longer tolerate dairy. Even a little amount can cause discomfort. As a result, I'm trying to eliminate or reduce both gluten and dairy from my diet, depending on how my body reacts to each. Currently, my primary focus is on improving my health. I am also determined to incorporate physical activity into my routine, starting with walks that I have neglected for the past couple of years after moving to the rural town, also due to my illness, surgery, and recovery. Now that I'm back in the city, getting back to walking is a priority. I'm finding it challenging due to a sort of paralysis that sets in whenever I consider going out on the streets. However, I hope to make it work somehow and get walking soon. Most importantly, I look forward to staying stress-free to help reverse the damage to my liver and prevent further complications. Having been chronically anxious most of my life, stress and anxiety seems to be the word I commonly get to hear from doctors of all specialties at every visit. Therefore, staying away from stressful situations, places, events, and people, reducing my weight and cortisol levels through better stress management, meditation, mindfulness, and taking ample time to rest seems crucial. Since I began to take self-care seriously and changed my diet to vegetarianism around 5 years back, I started to see my skin clearing up, and I see it getting better since my surgery. Now things seem to make sense when I bring together words like decades of chronic stress and anxiety, PCOS, chronic cholecystitis, intolerance to carbs and sugar, overeating, inflammation, and decades of sedentary lifestyle. It seems like all of this took a toll on me. I have been trying to include alternatives like millets in my diet in place of rice for the past 5 years. However, there have been months at a stretch when I turned to rice and ate a lot of sweets at social gatherings in the rural, as there was nothing else on the menu that was edible for those who are on a plant-based diet. It worked as a catalyst leading to my diagnosis of PCOS and grade 1 fatty liver, as we can see now. Now, after getting the diagnosis, it is easier to explain to those around me why I choose to exclude carbs and sugar from my diet and avoid any unwanted persuasion regarding the same. I hope it helps me deal with my diet better now that I have words to explain my condition. I have been on medicines for my PCOS and ear-related issues for the entire month of February 2025, which may or may not continue depending on how well my body or liver handles it. However, I am already experiencing positive results by incorporating a newly implemented low-fat and low-carb diet. I hope to feel better soon. After being on the medicines for a month, I realized that it seems my body now needs some rest from allopathy medicines to aid my liver health. It tells me it is the right time to explore alternative medicines in hopes of reversing the damage caused to my body over the years, since medicines are increasing my SGPT and SGOT levels. The pain has significantly reduced and has become more intermittent. It mainly occurs as a part of my PMS or when I consume simple carbohydrates or exceed my tolerance for fats. Each episode of pain and discomfort seems to differ from one another. The other day, I tried to explain the 3 different pain to my doctor, but I was interrupted and told not to overthink it, as it is nothing to worry about. Perhaps I have been overthinking it, and I have indeed been focusing too much on this pain, since it has been a constant presence for more than a year and a half now. I feel there is a need to distract myself from it. recently put on medications for migraine and costochondritis as well. The pain related to my surgery, the gallbladder, has reduced drastically. I no longer feel the pain like I used to. It is intermittent and comes only when I eat something that I'm not supposed to, when I eat more than I should, or with PMS. Now, after all this time, I'm finally feeling like myself without as much pain as I was once in. Although I am still dealing with fatigue and low energy levels when compared to the time before my surgery, I'm happy to say that I'm now able to complete a few tasks and chores by myself. Hopefully, I'll be able to be more productive soon. Looking back, while trying to address most of my health related issues in the years 2014 to 2020, particularly during the challenging period with my mental health, during the phases of depression, I frequently found myself questioning the ways of the world. I wondered why, in a place where the world expects people to take care of everybody else but themselves, where taking care of oneself takes a back seat, where it can be considered selfish, in such a world, why would I need to tend to my health? And how does it even matter? Although the question came from pain, I was determined to find the answer. The question weighed heavily on my mind, and finding the answer became crucial to keep me motivated to begin caring for my health. In search of a meaningful existence after years of questioning, when the thought, what if the universe is a living organism, crossed my mind, it resonated with me. I thought to myself, if we are indeed individual units, similar to cells or tissues, within this larger organism, it makes sense. After all, in that case, it seems we are more connected to the larger organism than the people around us. The people around us then relate to us based on our relation to the larger organism. Suddenly, the larger organism, the universe, becomes an extension of ourselves, and it only seems fair to take care of this organism's well-being by taking care of ourselves. I thought about paper cuts and how they hurt us and gain all our attention. So I thought that probably a single unit causes great pain to the host, the universe, when it is hurt. Therefore, caring for ourselves and those around us ensures we help the larger organism we are a part of. It made a lot of sense and gave a purpose to self-care, a purpose greater than self, society, or the opposite sex, a purpose better than our mundane life expectations, a purpose that my mind was satisfied with, and therefore I tried to stop the ways that were harming me. And I began my journey toward health. This perspective helped me understand the concept of the highest good, religion, and the notion of God in a new way. It illuminated phrases such as Atman is a part of Brahman. Therefore, it only seemed wise to explore the concept that helped me alter my thought process and see the world optimistically. After all these years, I now see my symptoms and problems in an all-new light. I may not have experienced it all, but in some ways I feel like I have tasted some aspects of the society that left a bitter taste in my mouth, and allows me to dip my toes into different people's lives, into different people's worlds, where I can imagine what they have to go through on the daily. Therefore, after all these years, I prefer to see these experiences as opportunities that allow me to study and understand the perspective of those who get discriminated against based on their color, shape, weight, gender, age, mental and physical health, dietary habits, religious or spiritual preferences, etc. For example, one such opportunity that I now see is to do with food. Relying solely on the cuisines that belong to my Bengali culture is no longer feasible to meet my dietary needs. In my culture, very few protein-rich, plant-based options are available, as we mostly rely on freshwater fish, rice, meat, and sweets, and somehow no dish feels complete without potatoes. On the bright side, having experienced the world as a non-vegetarian my entire life, I now get the opportunity to understand the vegetarian and vegan sides of the coin. Not just that, I now see the opportunity to explore, experiment with, and incorporate cuisines from different parts of the world into my diet to meet my dietary needs, allowing me to study and experience food habits from various cultures. Although it saddens me that I cannot eat some of the food that belongs to my culture anymore, I am thrilled to explore and learn about the rest of the world. Although I haven't yet received a clear explanation, all the hows and the whys about my symptoms from the professionals, I have come to understand that limiting my intake of sugar, carbs, fat, and processed or packaged foods, but especially sugar, is crucial for leading a healthy life moving forward. Over the years, I have had many experiences with healthcare practitioners and doctors in various settings, including government hospitals, private hospitals, clinics in both urban and rural settings in both Bangalore and Kolkata. I have also unknowingly received treatment from unqualified quack doctors during my stay in the rural area. My experiences have led me to question whether others have faced similar challenges in navigating the healthcare system. What is right and what is wrong with the current healthcare system? If it can be improved, and if yes, then how? Making sense of all these symptoms has required an excessive amount of effort on my part. I walk through these episodes looking for patterns, understanding each ailment and its causes, categorizing them to grasp the overall problem. This process seemed quite stressful and to some extent traumatic. It brings to mind those who are illiterate, who come from the rural or underprivileged backgrounds, or those who believe that once they seek help from a professional, they no longer have a role to play in their treatment. I wonder how these individuals navigate their situations and find ways to heal. All of this makes me want to explore the healthcare system as well as understand if there is any connection between health, spirituality, and religion, and if so, how. With this video, I aim to gather and lay down the puzzle pieces to continue to study and explore the hypothesis in which we see the universe as a living organism or a superorganism. This video is a record that journals my reflections as I reflect on my journey.